Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Bruce Smith. I'm the Vice Chair of the Advisory Board for the Institute of Retired Professionals. Unfortunately, the Chair of the Board, Harold Berkowitz, had a family emergency today and he couldn't be here, so I'm subbing in. I guess that's what it means to be Vice Chair. It's my privilege to welcome you to this celebration of Michael Markowitz. We are honored to have with us today an impressive array of speakers and performers from the IRP and leaders of the New School University. They include University Provost and Chief Academic Officer Tim Marshall and Mary Watson, Executive Dean of the Schools of Public Engagement, the home of the IRP. But before we hear from them, I would like to introduce a member who is extraordinarily involved with our program, and this fall will serve as our Interim Director. Miriam Lawrence.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really thrilled that I get to be the first one to congratulate Michael, who's really the most remarkable man and loved by all of us. And we hope that this celebration today does him justice. We are a community of close to 300 strong, and we have a shared purpose and a shared mission in our peer learning, peer-driven community. And I'm thrilled to tell everybody, IRP knows this, but to our visitors, to New School faculty and staff, to family and friends, that everybody in the IRP stands ready to do whatever's necessary to move our mission forward. This sense of shared purpose is one of the things that we owe to Michael, and I'd like to thank him for that now. And so, Michael, you have earned some rest, and we hope that you have a happy, healthy retirement, and maybe you'll come back to us on the other side of the desk. Thank you, and congratulations, Michael.
And now, University Provost and Chief Academic Officer, Tim Marshall.
Thank you, and yes, I am delighted to be here to celebrate the remarkable career and achievements of Michael, and to wish him well on the occasion of his retirement after 28 years at the helm of the Institute of Retired Professionals. But as we'll learn in a minute, that's not at all that he did for us at the New School. But I'd also like to take this opportunity to say a few words about the significance of the IRP as part of this university. You'll hear more about Michael as you go along, but this institution that he has brought through into great strengths over these 28 years actually, embodies a huge part of the spirit of the founding of the New School, as I'm sure many of you know. Throughout our history at the New School, we've been defining what it means to be a lifelong learner. It was established that way. I think the first motto of the New School was educating the educated. And indeed, one of the founders was the educational pioneer, John Dewey, who himself was probably the real icon of promoting democratic and engaged lifelong learning. So the IRP is really the kind of pinnacle of this, and in some ways the most tangible representation of a commitment to lifelong learning. At a point where learning really is about life, not just about the next career move. It's really can almost unequivocally be seen to be about curiosity, intellectual growth, and development. So part of what makes our academic community so dynamic is that it taps into so many types of learners and teachers, practitioners, professionals, artists, activists. And I think you know from the New School we have a tremendous range of all of the above, with design and social research sort of at the core of what we do, and a whole range that again starts from 19 onwards of both serious intellectual pursuit and highly creative practices across the performing creative arts, and political relevance and engagement sort of being the hallmarks of all we stand for. And the IRP is indeed the model of this very idea. It was founded 54 years ago in 1962 as a bold experiment in post-career adult learning, Hyman G. Hirsch, a former high school social studies teacher and lawyer who craved learning opportunities in retirement, had the idea for this innovative program, which he made a reality with the help of the then New School president, Henry David. More than just a place for retirees to pursue their academic interests and take university courses at a reduced fee, the IRP fostered a concept of adult volunteers becoming the curriculum designers, teachers, and students of a self-sustaining academic program, each taking responsibility for the success of the enterprise, whether as a study group leader or participant. This idea then was brand new. And coining the phrase peer learning, and this is the first I ever knew this part of the story, I had no idea that the IRP was responsible for coining what is now an incredibly important term, peer learning. The IRP became a blueprint for the lifelong learning movement, now replicated on more than 500 universities worldwide. And in keeping with its philosophy on making institutions of higher education open to adult learners, the New School has nurtured the Institute for Retired Professionals since its inception, and we've done so very, very proudly. And we are proud to honor Michael today for his extraordinary service to this important cornerstone of the New School. On behalf of the university and from me personally, thank you, Michael, and congratulations. We do wish you the very, very best. And now I'm turning it back to our MC. But thank you again, and I'll be back later for some other part.
Thank you, Provost Marshall. And now I would like to introduce Dean Mary Watson, Executive Dean of the Schools of Public Engagement, which is also the home of the IRP. And this is a dean that makes us feel very much at home. Dean Watson.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the nice introduction. It's my pleasure to be able to say a few words about Michael Markowitz and his experience at the New School and his leadership at the Institute for Retired Professionals. So, I first met Michael 2 years ago when I became executive dean of this division, and my predecessor dean, David Scobie, was a huge fan of the IRP and of Michael, and made sure that one of the first things we did was meet with Michael so that I could understand how essential the IRP and Michael himself were to the New School. And now, 2 years later, I've really come to understand this personally, that Michael's leadership at the New School and of the IRP itself has really been marked by distinction of innovation and integrity and long-term commitment. So indulge me with a couple of vignettes about Michael to talk about the strength of his commitment. Early on in my deanship, Michael invited me to address a general meeting of the IRP, and it was held in this very room with a crowd of about the size that we see today. I remember that day I told from this very stage my own personal story of my first encounter with the IRP, which was when I was a student in Toby Talbot's class, The Human Experience Through Film. Maybe some of you know that class. I hear some murmuring, which I had audited several times after arriving at the New School as a faculty member. For some reason, when I took the mic that day, like today, it felt right to tell a small personal story, even though we're in a large group of about 500 people. And as that general meeting progressed, I learned about the spirit of the IRP because one by one, first Michael, then the advisory board, and then one after another of peer leaders took this microphone to describe the various initiatives they were leading. I don't recall exactly how many there are, but in my memory, there were more than a dozen, there may have been a few more than that, who talked about different initiatives. It was a very impressive array. So some months later, I was in my office having an informal talk with Michael, and he said, why didn't I have some tea with a few IRP members so I could get to know them better? And I gladly accepted this invitation. So imagine my surprise when I arrived at the designated time and space, expecting to find a small circle of IRP members with a tiny individual teapot sitting around a table. But instead, I entered Woolman Hall, where hundreds of people were lined up in chairs, filling a very large room. Suffice it to say, there were many large institutional decanters of tea, and not a single small teapot in the room. And then after the informal tea, literally dozens of members lined up and one by one wanted to speak with me about Michael's amazing leadership, but also about how the IRP had been so important to their lives, to sustaining their health and livelihoods, and to encouraging the spirit of their lifelong learning. So what I learned in these two events is that the IRP is curiously both simultaneously large and small. It has a large, long-standing membership of nearly 300, but the secret of the IRP is that it's also a close, personal community. I sensed that the first day I addressed this group, and I didn't name it then, but now I know that it was Michael who taught me this, although he didn't use those words. But what I know now is that Michael understands the need to navigate between the large and the small, and he guided the IRP through his signature peer leadership approach, which is also carried out in the IRP itself. So how did Michael learn to do all this? Well, let's take a few comments about Michael's experience at the New School. Michael joined the New School in 1976 as then Director of Personnel, where he led and created the newly created Personnel Department of the university. Michael was instrumental in hiring new and amazing staff, in refining administrative systems, and he hired a number of important people, some of whom are still working at the university today. Former Vice President for Administration and Finance, Jack Krauskopf, whom I later knew as the Dean of Milano, said of Michael's directorship that he led with energy and with skill. So Michael had some other roles on a part-time basis, Director of Business and Management Programs and Manager of Library Services, which he held contiguous with other roles. But the big moment was 1998 when he assumed the directorship of the IRP. In this capacity, he presided over the program that Provost Marshall just told you about, which is really a prime example of positive aging and a testament to the potential for individual intellectual and social growth. In his remarks at the celebration of the 40th anniversary of the IRP, Michael talked about two phases that were very important to his leadership of this group. There were two demographic shifts. One was the increasing retirement of the boomer generation, which noted that members of the Institute could pursue continuous learning throughout the lifetime, and more importantly, to look at fields they'd never had time to study before. Michael captured this in a comment he made at one point where he said the IRP once started as a group of teachers exploring and now has become a group of explorers teaching. Then came technology, the other big shift, and Michael has guided some amazing technological fronts, including launching virtual discussion groups and classes for homebound seniors in partnership with the Virtual Senior Center, an initiative of self-help community services. He negotiated with the university, and dare I say with me, to acquire university email addresses for all the IRP membership. And he led the publication of the online periodical of arts and letters called the IRP Voices. He brought amazing public speakers, Jonathan Schwartz of National Public Radio, presidential historian and Pulitzer finalist Robert Dallek, famed Lincoln and abolition historian Eric Foner, jazz saxophonist Jane Ira Bloom, an expert on geriatric medicine Mark Lax, as well as the co-founder of the Feminist Press, Florence Howe, and many, many others. So I am just one of a number of deans that Michael has had the chance to work with over the years. Another of these former deans, Anne-Lou Shapiro, is here in the audience today. Anne-Lou, where are you? There you are back there. And Anne-Lou's husband, you may know, Michael Shapiro, is also a member of the IRP. Anne-Lou now has a new role at the university as faculty and staff ombudsperson, so welcome to that role, Anne-Lou. So what these deans and I have learned is that it was Michael's extraordinary talents and commitment and vision of progressive education for post-career adults that really has made an impact on our community. So as I've been known to say in many venues, the IRP is a deep part of the New School. It is not simply a program at the New School. And in this spirit, I'm happy to announce today that we are finalizing details with the IRP Advisory Board to create a long-term financial endowment for the IRP. We're generating a fund to which contributions can be made that will ensure the long-term financial presence and success of this amazing program. And we hope when the fund is officially announced that you will join us in making contributions to it. So Michael, now I want to wish you well on your retirement and future plans. I want to suggest, I don't know if there's free IRP membership, but there might be an exception made for Michael, or perhaps he can receive a scholarship, perhaps that would be possible, so you can continue in the IRP. But now we turn to the fun part. Provost Tim Marshall and I have a few gifts for you, Michael, so we'll come down to the microphone on the floor. So first from the university and from me is an original print of the first New School logo entitled The Tree of Knowledge. There are very few originals of this print left, and Michael, we are very proud to present you with one of them.
There was a handful of people who have championed the New School tree. We found it in a closet. We fought to preserve it, and it's so wonderful to be taking one home with me.
But we're not finished.
Also done by a quite famous designer, but that's another matter. That's my background. So we also have a resolution that we're going to be presenting to Michael, and I'll read to you what is on that resolution. It's quite long, as you can imagine, because Michael has done such an extraordinary range of things here with us. But here's what it says. Whereas Michael Markowitz has been valued member of the staff of the New School for more than 4 decades, and whereas for the first 13 years served as the university's Director of Human Resources, and whereas, in addition to his other duties, for 5 years served as Director of Business and Management Programs, and for 1 year as the Manager of Library Services, and whereas for the last 28 years served as the Director of the Institute of Retired Professionals, a groundbreaking program that coined the phrase peer learning and has been a model for more than 400 campus-based programs nationwide, and whereas he has afforded thousands of members of the New York elder community the opportunity to rise to new intellectual challenges, express their creativity, and forge important new relationships. And whereas under his leadership, former Mayor Michael Bloomberg declared that the New School IRP as, quote, one institution in particular that has demonstrated both the power of education and the fact that ceaseless learning is life's greatest adventure. And whereas upon the news of his retirement, he was lauded by Mayor Bill de Blasio as having, quote, improved the quality of life for post-career adults across our great city. And whereas he has supported IRP partnerships with other institutions and agencies, such as for the last 11 years hosting the New School, the New York City Department of the Aging Elder Abuse Conference, and for the last 4 years providing stimulating content for virtual discussion groups with homebound seniors using internet-based technology. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this day, September the 9th, 2016, the New School hereby honors Michael Markowitz, retiring director of the Institute of Retired Professionals, for his long, dedicated service and leadership across the university.
Bravo, Michael!
Thank you so much.
My two heroes.
As of now.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
You have been a champion.
Very welcome.
She has.
All right, so a photo op? It's a turn for a photo op. I'm holding the proclamation.
Thank you, Provost Marshall and Dean Watson. Our next speaker is Michael's former administrative assistant, Larry Jackson, who just returned to the New School to become the Assistant Provost for University Curriculum. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and good afternoon. It's wonderful to be back here. This is a place that really has been home for me over the years, and it's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and so many good friends here in the audience. And it's a real honor for me to be here to celebrate Michael's career, because my own career began here 14 years ago when Michael hired me to work as an assistant in the IRP office. Now, at the time, I was a grad student in philosophy at the New School, but in the 3.5 years that I worked here with Michael, I received from him an education that was every bit as rich as my formal studies. So here are just a few of the personal and professional lessons that Michael has imparted to me. Lesson number 1, be persistent. Now, this is a virtue that I think Michael acquired during his childhood in Brooklyn. His mother was actually a labor organizer for the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. And from what I can surmise, Michael himself actually grew up inside Ebbets Field, just a few steps away from Pee Wee Reese. He seems to have learned from both the labor movement and from the fighting Brooklyn Dodgers that you never, and I mean never, give up. Lesson number 2, when all else fails, tell a good story. When the power went off in our office just upstairs on the 5th floor one summer afternoon in 2003, Michael, realizing at last that it was a blackout, started talking to me about New York City in the summer of 1977. Now, maybe not the best idea because I was still fairly new to New York, but over the years, he would regale me with these wonderful stories about the glory days of the new school and of New York City, my favorite being the one about seeing Lenny Bruce and Billie Holiday perform together, both illegally because they had lost their cabaret license, at a theater on 7th Avenue, not too far from here. So anyone who knows Michael knows that he has a story for every occasion, and it's usually accompanied by that wonderful, loud, and contagious laugh that kind of convulses his whole body. Lesson number 3, don't let the past define you. So even though Michael had all these wonderful stories about the past, he always has had a vision for the future. And as has been mentioned so far, he left his career in business and in human resources to become director of the IRP. And that really requires a lot of imagination and a lot of courage to make that kind of life change. And it's fitting, too, because I think that ethos of reinvention, of following new passions wherever they may lead you, is exactly what the IRP is about. And lesson number 4 that I want to share, serve cookies at every meeting. The importance of this one cannot be stressed enough. So these are just a few of the very important lessons that I learned while working for Michael at the IRP. But I want to say that the most important gifts that he really gave me were the constant support and encouragement that I received while I was working there for 3.5 years. He would constantly say to people, "Larry is studying to be a philosopher." And he was very proud of this. And from time to time, he would check in with me to see how my studies were going, to make sure I was getting enough sleep, that I was resting, that I was eating well. And of course, ever the human resources professional, he would make sure that I had made the best selection of health and retirement benefits each year during open enrollment. So I didn't know anything about the IRP when I had my first interview with Michael 14 years ago. I really just needed a job, and it was a job that was available on campus. But I quickly came to appreciate that this community of lifelong learners, with their enduring commitment to shared inquiry, really represents what is best about the new school. And that's largely due to Michael's persistence, to his imagination, to his courage, to his knowledge of the past, and his vision of the future. And all of these have helped to make the IRP what it is today, and they've also helped to make me who I am today. So I want to thank you, Michael, for hiring me 14 years ago, and for being one of the greatest teachers that I have ever known. Thank you.
Next, representing the members of the IRP, we will hear from Judith Fried, who has been a member of the IRP since 1993. Judith?
Larry, you're a hard act to follow. A few years ago, I wrote some of these words for a year-end party and decided that with some editing, they warrant repeating. As you were told, I'm from the class of '93, which included people you probably know, Norma Grossman, Florence Hornstein, and Liz Hubig. Others you know, Mimi Weisblum, Sally Lipsy, and Maureen Sullivan, are from the class of '92. I know there are people who are from earlier classes, but I didn't include them because I didn't know their names. Those years ago, when we all joined the IRP, did not in any way resemble the one you are in now. There were no semesters. Classes were held on alternate weeks from September to June. There was no need to commit to class attendance, and members were not discouraged from dropping in on classes such as news and views and making the best of our years. But that fall of 1993, Jonathan Fanton, president of what was still the New School for Social Research, told Michael that the IRP must conform to New School's expectations: academic excellence, regular semesters, regular class enrollment, and attendance records kept. Some of you remember or have heard about the chaos that followed. Yes, I see nods. And it certainly was chaos. When the membership learned that the required changes, rebellion ensued. Few of the IRP people thought the university had any right to tell the IRP what they should do. And right here, where we are now, in this room, there were stormy public fighting, during which time Michael was called names I shan't repeat. At the end of the fall semester of '94, 150 members decamped, thinking that without them, the IRP would cease to be. They really did believe that. Of course, that did not happen. After the discontent had departed for one semester, Fanton asked us not to admit any new members so that he could see that we really would adopt the new school calendar and class standards. Then happily, on October 17th, 1995, President Fanton came to the IRP General Meeting, gave opening remarks, and reassured us that we still had a home on West 12th Street. Then Michael fashioned the curriculum committee and the admissions committee that are now taken for granted. He helped the newly appointed advisory board because the people who had left had been the advisory board. And we figured out what to do and how to do it. Board elections among the important tasks. Believe me, without Michael, none of this would have come to pass, and the IRP you enjoy today would not exist. Now here's a little more history. In 1996, a man named Ira Weinblatt joined the IRP, and in 1997 was elected board president. All the men now in the IRP should know something about Ira. Soon after he joined, Ira noticed that men often dropped out while women did not. That, he said, is because women just naturally get together and talk. So we should have a men's group. Every man who joins the IRP will be invited. I confess, I often wondered what they talked about because men were no longer dropping out, but their privacy was kept, and as you know, that privacy continues today. Why do the papers always get stuck together? Now I'd like to say something about how I really got to know Michael. When Ira became board president, he asked me to be his Veep because he figured I'd been in the IRP a little while longer than he and probably knew what was going on. Nice of him, not exactly accurate. Early in his tenure, an awful thing happened and Ira was killed. We were all shocked and dismayed at the loss of this wise man, and I, feeling intimidated at the thought, became board president in 1998. I met with Michael constantly, asking advice, learning about IRP issues, making agendas, and begging him to sit by me at meetings as I was really not sure what I was doing. I soon learned that Michael knew not just their names, but also something about every single member. He knew what they were interested in and what they had done before coming to IRP. He knew just when to urge a person to risk becoming a coordinator, and he knew what kind of classes would be popular and go well. In time, our frequent meetings were not just about IRP business. Michael began to talk about his family and about Sam. And I talked about my kids. We became friends, and it has been one of the important friendships of my life. So I want to thank you, Michael, for the years of our friendship and for the years you gave to IRP to make it ever more worthy, ever growing, and an extraordinary adventure for so many fortunate people.
Sondra Farganis was the Associate Dean and head of the Vera List Center, as well as the Wolfson Center at the new school. We want to extend our congratulations to Sondra, who was recently named ambassador of the Australian American Fulbright Commission. Sondra had planned to be here, but she was unable to join us today, but she did send us her remarks, and Carmen Mason will share her thoughts.
So this is from Sondra Farganis. Let me play it safe and start with a quote from Thoreau. Not that the story need to be long, but it will take a long time to make it short. I wish to advance several observations I have made from a lifetime, well, at least from the 1940s on, of observing Michael Markowitz. I do this from the perspective of being a Brooklyn girl, having a career of several decades at the New School, and being trained as a political scientist who can be held accountable for sharp acumen and maybe even faulty analysis. Markowitz, as he is known in my family, has had a fascinating life, and he has swooped us all into it. Much of his life has been spent at the New School, and in his many, many years with the IRP, hundreds of people have dropped in to see him, to schmooze, to encourage and criticize, to cross-examine, to berate, to challenge, and to wish him success as he protects and provides for the IRP. Had he secretly taped or photographed those exchanges, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, and J. Edgar Hoover, where are you when we need you? We would have had a document of not only the IRP, but also the New School, New York, the US of A, the cultural and cuisine scene, the alliances right and left, the universe. Michael is a walking book club, a restaurant reviewer, a discoverer of talent, and a lover of life. For the period of which we speak is the story not only of the IRP and the New School, but also the story of America, as it has been shaped by the forces of the 1960s on. If I could make the point that the New School is on the one side, the 1919 side of American liberty, it is also on the other side in its preparedness to embrace refugees, be they from the horrors of the 1930s and the ramifications from that period, and the university's strengths to embrace many different kinds of people is also the Markowitz story. The New School, at its best, has grown and evolved. So has Michael. From where I stand, there have been two major influences on Michael's life here. One is the power to educate. The other is the power to become your own person. As director of the IRP, Michael, aided and abetted by the members of the IRP, took chances. He was a game changer. He was out of the box. He has turned the dysfunctional into functional. He has turned mischief into programs. He has stood his ground even as that ground shifted. To me, his success here has been his real passion for the IRP project. And he has understood the multiple parts of the university. At its best, its pragmatism, its commitment to underdogs, stray cats, wounded warriors, and those marginalized by race, class, gender, and what some call disabilities, but which I believe Michael would call distinctions and differences. In his very person, he demands we think about the nature of identity. I never left his office without seeing something from a different angle. He never gave me a present that had not been thought through. He found the most interesting music to present to Dion upon his college graduation, and he visited every ceramic show that Daphne has done in the city. And let us remember, without Sam, we would not have such a great Michael. The story of the IRP is coincident with the Markowitz story, one of seduction and of learning to trust and respect the other. For Markowitz is tough, sarcastic, yet warm and fuzzy. He is judgmental when he has to be, and tolerant of varying positions when that is what is needed. He knows when to say, enough with the processing, we need closure and an action plan. The new school was fortunate to have the IRP come into being in 1962, and the school was blessed when Markowitz became director of the IRP in 1989. On a personal note, when I transitioned here from Vassar in 1988, I had no idea that within a few months I'd have Markowitz down the hall from me. Jim Farganis said, "Honey, your stars are aligned." That's the way Greeks talk. I thought, do they knoweth what they have wrought? Markowitz and Farganis are going to ride this one together. We are going to be good by being bad. I have stories upon stories of what we did. There is no retiring party for Markowitz, just the opening of a new chapter. Michael, I speak for your fans when I say, we love you, buddy, and we wish you the best. The words of Sondra Farganis.
Thank you, Carmen. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has sent a letter of congratulations to Michael. Now, another long-standing member of the IRP, Annette Fidler, will share the mayor's comments with you.
September 9th, 2016. Dear Mr. Markowitz, I am delighted to congratulate a terrific New Yorker on the eve of his retirement. As director of the New School Institute for Retired Professionals, for 28 years, you have improved the quality of life of post-career adults across our great city and inspired institutions across our nation to advance the lifelong learning movement. By fostering intergenerational connections and engaging older New Yorkers through films, lectures, discussions, study groups, and more, you have helped to build a brighter and more inclusive future. After working for decades to ensure happy and healthy retirements for your neighbors, the time has come for you to enjoy your own. May this next chapter be as great as the man who wrote it. On behalf of the City of New York, Charlene and I extend our warm wishes for a terrific celebration and an enjoyable retirement. Sincerely, Bill de Blasio, Mayor.
Thank you, Annette. We have a slight program change. As most of you know, the IRP has a history of presenting humorous skits at our membership meetings that satirize who we are and what we do. But as George S. Kaufman so aptly put it, satire is what closes on Saturday night. And evidently, the players decided they needed a little more rehearsal and decided to cut it off a little before Saturday night, out of town. But many of our members have other special talents and strong passions. And the IRP is fortunate to have a number of gifted poets among our members. 4 of our bards have created original poems for today to honor Michael. In order of appearance, they will be Carol Schoen, Carmen Mason, Mark Fischweicher, and Tom Ashley.
I'm first. I'm Carol. This is What Words for Michael. Barricaded by a stack of books on the 5th floor office, he calls out to a passing student, suggests a book, an article. Great idea for a study group, maybe a whole series. He stood up for us, insisted on standards for study when many wanted it easy. He worked hard. He deserves a vacation, but only a vacation. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Mark Fischweicher. I am the poetry editor currently of the online Voices magazine. And I guess I didn't get the message clearly. It's because the poem that I'm reading was really just a poem that I thought Michael might enjoy, but it's not a poem that was written for the occasion with Michael in mind. But I hope he enjoys it. It may offer some advice as far as retirement is concerned. And it was written while here at the IRP. If you wanted to state simply what the advice might be, it would be that the beauty never ends. I could leave now. But there are a few things to be aware of in this poem. It's an early April poem, so it's a cold. It's about a frost. It's not 92 outside. It's cold. And it's a sestina. By that, if you don't know what a sestina, it means that the last word of many of the lines are repeated in a geometric pattern so that you'll hear them again and again. For example, you might hear ice or icy or frost or frozen or twigs or shining or some form of shining as the last word of a line. It's instead of rhyming. And the last thing you need to know is that there's a baseball term in it. And the baseball term is called a snow cone. Does anyone here know what a snow cone catch is? You can see the ball coming. You see it? That's the snow cone. You catch it right at the tip of your glove. Okay? So it's called sestina for the highest point in Connecticut. Connecticut, right? From the trailhead on the road, in 15 minutes' time, a short but steep section takes you out of the chaos of winter melt, up the southeast face of Round, into the remains of Friday's sudden frost, and your first view of what it had done to the buds and branches with its icy touch, turning them all into a glistening tangle of shining light, as if Christmas was something not man-made, but made of twigs. It happened so fast that on the bud ends and angles of each twig, where beads had formed, the droplets froze without time to fall, and hung now like prisms, with branches all asheen in glossy tinsel, which, when the wind blew lightly, clinked like a woods of glass one could label fragile. And carefully, if you pried, a laurel leaf would yield its skin of ice to you, its ovate curve intact, with midrib, point, and veins, all stamped and etched in a frozen relief, slowly melting in your hands. This sudden frost will pass, as city petals paint sidewalks pink a day or two, till they turn brown as twigs. But now the image stays with you for hours, even the trail grass fringed with ice, up over Round and up over Frizzle, the soft peaks more like swells, softened over time, as hull-like cloud shadows drift across the upper valley, your view unobstructed by all the leafy chaos of lush green summer, when the laurel blooms as briefly as it does now, shining in the moon. But it is time to descend, to go home, time to go home to the inevitable disasters the world has shown us. Man's malevolence, nature's fury, grim disease, old age, frozen and forever cold, speechless, stunned and glassy-eyed. Alone we watch as maybe cancer turns us into twigs. But I count ourselves as lucky to have been there just on time to take it in, to make it part of us before our brittle limbs are fragile as the ice itself. This landscape is imagined. I offer it to you to break the ice between us. Listen with your eyes closed, and you will be filled with light. The rain will suddenly end. Our hands will move in unison like clouds, a timeless moment. Like Tai Chi students in the park you watch on your way to work, frozen in their postures, warding off the evil that surrounds us with bamboo sticks the teacher gave them as their swords. Enough to conquer chaos, you might ask? Those soft, round hills, like lenses, framed my thoughts, polished to an icy chill. They were the kindling made my vision shine, but in the end, the next day, at the baseball game, too cold to swing the bat, it was the chance to share that moment gave me glee. So, there, you take the stick, your eyes the window. Any moment serves. The final out, the catch, snow-coned in a desperate slide. His performance, just another moment that outshines this frozen world. Thank you.
Well, my advice to you, Michael, now that you're retiring, is that you should try to write some poetry. And I would just suggest that you start with a happy poem, and then you can become more serious. So this is a happy poem. A happy poem. And violators will be towed to candy fields and tickled to be still and muzzled to sit on couch potato pillows, mouths softly opened with billows of mocha apple strudels and real cheddar butter noodles, arms bound with candy cotton, till these guys cease to be rotten, 'cause this happy poem will be heard. You know that speckled wig hatcher that broke its wing? Well, it healed the very next morning and it flew off to sing. Remember the muffler in my rusty old Volkswagen? Well, it stopped making noise, no stalling, no flagging. Remember Mom was leaving Dad on count of his drinking? Today she announced, whatever was I thinking? And you know those 1,000 private emails of Hillary's? Well, they've disappeared. They're all gone. She's off the pillory. And her looks are so presidential now. She's wearing striped gold ties by Drumpf. Striped gold ties by Drumpf. And, in fact, Melania is copying her, of course, with added oomph. And the Donald just announced that he's passed Columbia's GREs. He took them late last night at his private university. Then he added that all black Detroiters will paint the White House gold come the fall. And then all his black and Mexican brothers will start building that wall. So show me where the naysaying crepe hangers are so I can tow him. 'Cause this is and the world knows we need it, a happy poem.
Hi, I'm Tom Ashley. All members of the New School Universities division at the IRP are proud and fortunate. The IRP has just added an enormous dimension to all of our lives. So, I wrote this poem with a little help from my friends, Sarah White and Carmen Mason. The title is There's Always Been You. Michael, we've been coming, some for a decade, some for 2, thinking we knew everything, learning that wasn't true. Today you're leaving, sad news, and amazing too, that through the last 30 years, there's always been you. You've brought us brave new vistas, offering support. You've helped us to unlock this intellectual resort. We've checked our egos at the door, well, all but a few, making lifelong friends and memories, and there was always you. If we had business in your office or came in to shoot the breeze, we would leave it as a member of one of your committees. You've shown fine leadership, but left a little mystery. How could you have so many students and not one receive a degree? In our well-curated habitat, you made rigorous demands. We struggled, persevered, becoming the finest in the land. And now you're leaving us. Retired will be your game. If you have a problem, just ask us. Retired is our middle name. And about that desk of yours, a wonder it did not catch fire. Well, enough for this tomfoolery. You must be getting tired. You've had a great team, Dick, Judith, Amy, Heather, to name only a few. Miriam, Dick. Now, Michael Markowitz, for all of us, and our beloved spirits too, there will always be you. I'm not through. We have a little video coming up, and I want to thank all the people who contributed to it. And there are 6 of you in the audience that don't know you have contributed to it, but in 5 minutes you will. Okay, thank you.
Sometimes I dream that he is me. You got to see that's how I dream to be. I dream I move. I dream I groove. Like Mike, if I could be like Mike.
Michael Markowitz was born in Brooklyn sometime during the last century. As a child, Michael Markowitz loved going to Coney Island, and he still loves going there today. Here he is, thinking and thinking about his future, while simultaneously posing for his good friend Rodin. He thought about playing with his friend, Lou Gehrig, and the Babe. He thought about becoming an actor. Here he is with Marilyn Monroe. Michael finally joined the Army. He found his way to the New School, and his life took off from there. Meanwhile, inside of the Institute, there was a war brewing, and Michael was installed as the new head of the IRP. Peace reigned again.
Michael rolled the boat ashore. Hallelujah.
We asked his close friend, Mark Twain, why Michael?
Now you may wonder why. Well, because of his intellect.
But on a more personal note, Michael found love in a music store when he met his life partner, Sam Tern. On September 14th, 2014, Michael and Sam were married, despite Michael's favorite song being
Look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in.
We asked student Judy Goldman how she felt about Michael's suggestion to give the highly popular class on strip poker for seniors.
And I would say that in my younger years I was rather shy, so I never would have done this. But the first place, being in front of the class and having people interested in what you are interested in is remarkable feeling.
Then we asked Steve Rickstein when he asked Michael, where do you go when you want to cut classes?
You go into the lounge, you know, there's like a dozen tables there, and there are people sitting at every table. And no matter where you sit, you're greeted, people are friendly, and it's going to be some kind of interesting conversation. It doesn't have to be overwhelmingly intellectual.
When Michael decided to retire, many decisions had to be made. Number one was clearing out his office. Jan Adler, who headed up the cleaning team, recalled,
"This really is a group of people with a common mission, you know, and a tremendous investment in the success of that mission. And they bring energy and commitment, time, you know, all the things that are important to make something work."
Then there was John Becker, head of strategic planning for the project.
For 6 semesters and doing it rather intensively with the expert guidance of these co-coordinators made it much more enjoyable and much more understandable.
Maria Perez, chief of recycling and liquidation, reminisced.
To get those minds together in one room, it is very interesting for me just to have other perspectives.
After the office was exhumed, I asked a few other IRPers how they felt as they entered it now. Here's Susan Rausch.
So I'm really enjoying the opportunity to explore a whole other area.
And Frank Montaturo said he was thrilled.
It's more than being thrilled. I'm moved by the experience.
And why are you back today, Michael?
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Michael, we celebrate and honor you. You've taken us to unknown worlds.
I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that my heart and mind embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in.
As most of you probably recognize, an event like this takes a lot of planning and a lot of hard work. Your program has a list of people, both from the new school staff and from our membership, who made this celebration of Michael possible. But there is one person, and that person shouldn't leave just yet. There is one person that worked tirelessly from the very beginning of this planning and really deserves a special thank you, and that person is Mary Connolly back there. And now, I believe Michael would like to say a few words. And after Michael speaks, please join us at the Teresa Lang Center on 13th Street on the second floor. And as they say on The Tonight Show, or used to say on The Tonight Show, here's Michael.
I'm touched. Obviously, that's a word that has to be said. I so appreciate the fact that so many of you came to say that you were listening. And rather than give a long talk, I'm going to give you a summary of my own speech. I wanted to share with you how I came to the new school. The only way you're going to find out is to take me to lunch. I wanted to share with you my mother's response when she learned that I was going to a place with the name of the new school. And I wanted to tell how soon after I came to the new school, we couldn't make the payroll. There was no connection. We just were not doing much education that didn't come up in February and in September. So let me just thank the people here, my colleagues at the university, for giving me the opportunity to work with people who are so creatively engaged in their lives and the lives of other people. I will miss you, but there is a tradition of coming back, which I will save that card on. Let me just say that the new school has really shown us all, and continues to show us all, how transformative learning can be over the course of your life cycle. We have a heritage here, we all acknowledge it. We have a heritage here of supporting this venture. So get to work. And I really do love you all.